At the office bash, Emma's college buddy from her time studying in Italy, Max, tossed her a line in Italian. "If I had returned to the country with you all those years ago, would you have been my wife by now?" Emma answered without missing a beat. "Absolutely." She figured Ethan didn't get Italian. Little did she realize, Ethan had hustled to learn Italian just to make a trip to see her in Italy. But whenever Ethan suggested visiting her, Emma shut him down, telling him not to come around. He watched them interact, lifted his glass, and smoothly wished them all the best in Italian. Then added, "Here's to both of you having endless happiness." Emma was stunned. "Wait, you speak Italian?" He finished his drink with a grin. "Picked it up the first year you went overseas. Never really had the chance to use it till now, and I don't plan on needing it again." Emma started to panic. Emma was chatting effortlessly in Italian with Max while carefully feeding Ethan some fruit. She didn't even notice the slight puffiness around his eyes. She thought Ethan didn't understand Italian, so she felt free to chat openly with her old flame in front of him. What she didn't realize was that over the years, Ethan had picked up several languages to stay connected with her. He'd mastered 5 foreign tongues, even catching her casual Italian convos with Max, her old flame. He understood everything perfectly. Pretending not to get it, he asked, "What are you two talking about?" She laughed lightly and half-heartedly replied, "What else, right? Besides work." They went from discussing relationships to astronomy, talking animatedly. Meanwhile, Emma was dismissive and impatient with Ethan. They shared sunsets together, which she called totally boring, but she couldn't stop praising the stray cat Max had snapped a pic of, chatting about it for a whole hour. She had been fooling Ethan all this time, and he had deceived her about one thing. A month later, Ethan was assigned to a secret overseas project in Country B. No matter what Emma did, she couldn't track him down. Looking at the woman he'd loved for 2 decades, she still had the same look, the same features, but she had turned into someone unrecognizable. Suddenly, everything felt pointless. He didn't want to keep playing this game with her. He made an excuse to get back to work, stood up, and as he did, Emma stood too. She said, "Let's call it a day. I'm heading back with my hubby to help him out." The classmates groaned. "We've just started catching up. Why leave so soon?" Max chimed in, "Yeah, we rarely get to meet." "Can't you stick around a bit longer?" Seeing Emma's hesitant look, Ethan smiled lightly and acted cool. "You stay and enjoy with them. I can head out solo." He let go of her hand and walked out. After leaving the room, Ethan got into his car and was about to start the engine when he realized the hangover meds he had set aside for Emma were still in his pocket. She didn't handle booze well, and he was worried she might overdo it. Still wanting to give her the meds himself, he got out and headed back. At the door, he heard teasing and laughter from inside. On some wild impulse, he cracked the door open slightly and saw Emma and Max's lips pressed together, separated only by a thin sheet of paper. Emma's delicate face flushed slightly, while Max's eyes were full of desire. Amid the playful chatter, the thin piece of paper between them had slipped off. Max moved his hand to the back of her head, deepening the kiss. Ethan's breath hitched, and his heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant fist. An intense pain surged through him. Someone called out, "Emma, aren't you worried Ethan will find out?" Emma broke the kiss and laughed. "No, he trusts me too much. He'd never suspect anything. Plus, he won't know about us. Max and I speak Italian when we talk, and he doesn't get it. You two sure know how to play. I thought you and Ethan were all about pure love. Didn't expect you to fall first." Emma tilted her head back and finished her drink. "I still love him, but I can't just love him. After so many years, facing the same person gets tiring. What I'm doing makes sense. As long as it's hidden and he never finds out, everything's cool." Her words thickened the atmosphere, and someone suggested playing truth or dare. Everyone took turns spinning the bottle on the table. Whoever it pointed to had to tell the truth. After a few rounds, it landed on Emma. A classmate slyly asked, "You and Max were together abroad for 3 years. Did you really develop feelings for him?" Emma smiled and replied without hesitation, I truly loved him. The classmate pressed on. So who do you love more, Ethan or Max? Emma looked down, sipping her drink, but her eyes never left Max, leaving the answer unclear. Standing outside the door, Ethan watched everything unfold. His heart felt like it was being ripped apart, as if a gaping hole had been torn open. He thought back to 8 years ago when he married Emma. She had flawless makeup, wearing a white wedding dress, holding a bouquet, walking slowly toward him. Her lips curled into a warm smile, and her dimples looked especially sweet. At that moment, he felt like he had won the world. He held her hand tightly, raised it high, and joyfully announced to the guests that he had finally married the girl he loved the most. At that time, she also shed tears, promising to love him for a lifetime. But in just 8 short years, the girl who made him feel like he'd won the world had made him lose everything. He couldn't watch any longer, so he turned and walked away. As he turned, he bumped into a server bringing more drinks. He put a finger to his lips, signaling him to stay quiet. My wife is inside, cheating. I'm looking for proof. Please, don't tell them I was here. The server, a young guy just starting out, looked at him sympathetically. Men really do get men better. After confirming the server wouldn't spill, Ethan felt a bit better and left. He wiped a tear from his eye with the back of his hand, composed himself, and walked out. He got back in the car, started the engine, and drove to the courtyard where he and Emma had grown up. After things got better, everyone gradually drifted away. The empty courtyard now felt cold and desolate. He sat on the doorstep, staring blankly for a long time. In a daze, he seemed to see the girl with pigtails, holding his face, making a lifetime promise. I'll only love you in this life. We have to stay together forever. I can't live without you, Ethan. Those who break promises must be punished. And so, I'll punish you. In 1 month, you'll never see me again. He stayed in the courtyard until late at night before heading home. He opened the door, and the house was pitch black. Glancing at his phone, there were no new messages. He gave a self-deprecating smile and turned off the phone. Turning around, he went to the bathroom to shower. Then, he comfortably lay in bed, drifting into a half-asleep state. In the middle of the night, he felt the bed sink on the other side and someone tightly hugged him from behind. Emma smelled like alcohol and said in a hoarse voice, I'm sorry. I haven't seen them in so long. I got a little carried away and drank too much. He spoke in a flat tone. Why didn't you have me come pick you up? She hugged him even tighter. Max lives nearby, so he just gave me a ride home. I didn't want to disturb your rest, so I didn't call you. He hummed in acknowledgement, not wanting to continue the conversation. He tried to pry her hands off and turned over to sleep in a different position, but found that she had already fallen asleep. Her eyes were tightly shut, and there were still glaring kiss marks on her neck. The red marks pulsed in time with her heartbeat, as if Max was silently challenging him. He couldn't sleep anymore. He got up and went to the living room to light a cigarette. As the smoke filled the air, he instinctively stubbed it out. Emma had severe rhinitis and couldn't stand the smell of smoke. He, a smoker with 10 years of experience, had forced himself to quit, but now he didn't want to quit anymore. Emma, you're not worth me doing that for. He leaned against the couch, lighting one cigarette after another. He thought back to his university days when a girl had relentlessly pursued him. Emma, upon finding out, deliberately put on exquisite makeup and held his hand as they walked along the path the girl took after class. She arrogantly claimed him as hers, declaring loudly to the girl, Ethan is my boyfriend, and he will be my husband in the future. You'll never have a chance. Back then, she was beautiful, bright, lively, and full of energy that could infect everyone around her. Who wouldn't have liked her? But the girl who used to only have eyes for him seemed to have vanished at some point. Now, Emma had shed her youthful naivety, becoming mature and composed, full of charm, but no longer had the passion or genuine love she once had for him. The next morning, Ethan was woken up by noises from the kitchen. He opened his eyes and saw Emma wearing an apron, busy cooking. His heart skipped a beat. Emma had never stepped into the kitchen in all the years they'd been married. He knew she had delicate skin and couldn't bear the smell of oil fumes, so he had always kept her from cooking. Had she realized her guilt and was trying to make up for it this way? As he thought this, he got up, put on his shoes, and stepped over the scattered cigarettes on the floor, heading straight to the kitchen. By the time he entered, she had already put the steaming seafood congee into a thermos. When she saw him, she barely lifted her eyes but didn't stop moving. "You're awake. Why did you sleep on the couch last night?" "I'm heading out for a bit. Max drank too much last night. I'm going to take him some congee for his stomach." Perhaps realizing something was off, she glanced at the empty pot and apologized. "It's my first time making congee, and I guess I didn't make enough. Just eat what you can." Without waiting for his response, she walked out of the kitchen. But when her eyes landed on the cigarette butts on the living room floor, she stopped in her tracks. She turned around, her gaze filled with an emotion he couldn't quite understand. "Ethan, didn't I tell you before I don't like you smoking? You don't listen to me. Well, I'm going to punish you. For the next few days, you won't see me." She pretended to be angry, but then smiled softly. "Don't be so serious. I've just been busy with the project. It's almost at the final stage, so everyone's been staying at the office to work. Don't overthink it. Once I finish, I'll spend more time with you while speaking." She changed into her house slippers at the entrance. "You've always wanted to go to Shicheng?" "Right, next month. I'll take a half-month leave and go with you. How about that?" Before he could say anything, the door slammed shut with a loud bang. "Next month, Emma. There won't be a next month for us." The following week, he didn't see Emma at all. She came home while he was away during the day to grab some clothes. He never inquired about her whereabouts, but Max's WeChat moments became more and more frequent. There were pictures of Emma making soup for him, photos of Emma drunk, nervously singing love songs for him on stage, images of Emma wearing a light, airy dress, dancing gracefully just to make him smile. Each post was a blatant display of Emma's passionate love for him. He never liked or commented on any of them. He simply pretended he hadn't seen them. He had more important things to do with only 1 week left before he left the country. He needed to erase all traces of himself in this house. On the first day, while Emma was making health soup for Max, he threw the nutrition plan he had personally designed for her into the shredder. On the second day, while Emma blushed and sang love songs for Max at a bar, he burned every letter they had written to each other. On the third day, while Emma kissed Max under the moonlight, he threw their wedding rings into the sea. On the day he left, Emma appeared by his bedside looking exhausted. "Ethan, why does it feel like there's less and less stuff around here?" He looked at her, his tone indifferent. "A little decluttering makes the house cleaner and more organized. Some things that no longer serve a purpose should be removed sooner rather than later." She knew he was talking about the garbage, but a hint of panic still flashed across her face. She took his arm and smiled. "You've worked so hard these years, not only at work but also taking care of me in the house. Once I finish this project, I'll make it up to you." At that moment, his phone buzzed with a message. Emma asked, "What's been successfully processed?" His heart skipped a beat upon hearing her question. He grabbed his phone, quickly locked the screen, and turned it face down on the bed. Luckily, he had changed the screen lock password so Emma could only see a few words. He pretended like nothing had happened and casually said, "Nothing important. There's a new dessert shop near the community. Their treats look good, so I signed up for a membership. I'll get you some small cakes next time." Emma seemed to relax, lying in his arms and asking coquettishly, "Guess what I brought you?" He froze for a moment, then casually replied, "That chicken wrap from Chinko." Emma's eyes widened with surprise. "Guess what I brought you?" He repeated. "That chicken wrap from Chinko?" Emma's eyes widened with surprise. "Baby, how did you know?" "How could I not know?" Back in university, Emma used to attend various club activities, and inevitably she'd have physical contact with male classmates. He'd get upset and jealous, And to make him happy, she once missed 3 buses just to buy him that chicken wrap. When she appeared with the warm chicken wrap in her hands, he instantly softened. She cupped his face, her eyes filled with affection. Ethan is such a little food lover. You're so easy to please. Just a few small buns, and you're happy. He pretended to be angry, puffing out his cheeks. It's not that I'm easy to please. It's that I love you and am willing to give you an easy way out. If one day I stop loving you, even if you dug out your heart and gave it to me, I wouldn't look at you, he added. Now she still tried to soften his heart with the same trick, but he wasn't willing to give her that chance anymore. Emma cautiously pulled out the thermal container with the chicken wrap from behind her, offering it to him as if it were a treasure. I know nothing can escape your food-loving eyes. You came running as soon as you smelled it. He looked into her eyes, full of tenderness, and gave a bitter smile. You really can't hide anything from me. It seemed like his words had hit a nerve. Emma lowered her gaze, flustered. Ethan, Seeing her flustered expression, he suddenly found it a bit amusing. He took the thermal container from her hands and placed it on the bedside table. Then he pulled out a beautifully wrapped gift box from the drawer and handed it to her. Her face lit up with surprise. What's this? Just as she was about to open it, he stopped her. This is a gift for our 8th wedding anniversary. Wait until then to open it. If you open it now, there won't be any surprise. Emma nodded and kissed his cheek lightly. Okay, I'll listen to you. I'll keep it and open it when the day comes. Suddenly, she realized something was off and asked, Our anniversary is in 2 days. Why are you giving it to me early? He replied indifferently, I just didn't want you to be too busy and not have time to give it to you. Emma spoke with a hint of apology. Wait for me a little longer. I'll be done soon, and then I'll stay by your side every day. Not wanting to watch her perform her fake act, he stood up and went to the bathroom to freshen up. When he came out, Emma had already changed into a turquoise mermaid skirt. Her makeup was meticulously done, and she looked lively and beautiful. He glanced at her. What event are you attending today? She took a necklace, an expensive one that his mother had gifted her when they got married, and asked him to help her put it on. It was delicate and valuable, the kind of necklace she had only worn once on their wedding day. She noticed the confusion in his eyes through the mirror and explained, I'm going to the birthday party of the leadership from the client company. For important occasions, one should always dress more grandly, but he had just seen on Max's latest post that today was his birthday. He smiled lightly and responded, It's indeed an important day, so you should dress grandly. Perhaps she picked up on his insinuation. She smiled lightly and replied, It's indeed an important day, so you should dress grandly? Maybe she caught his drift. She turned around and rushed into his arms. I promise I won't drink too much tonight. I'll come back early to keep you company. Is that okay? He gently pushed her away, forcing a smile. Okay, go ahead. Don't be late for your business. When Emma saw his smile, she finally relaxed. She put on her high heels and swayed her slim waist as she left. Watching Emma walk downstairs, he let out a long sigh, wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes, and grabbed his suitcase. He took one last look around the house he had lived in for 8 years. This time, he was saying a final goodbye. He took out his phone and took screenshots of all the WeChat moments Max had posted in the past few weeks, all those visible only to him, and sent them to Emma. I actually learned Italian for you during the first year you were abroad. Unfortunately, I'll never get to use it. I agree with your wish to become Max's wife. May you both grow old together. After doing all of this, he took out his SIM card and threw it, along with the box of chicken wraps, into the trash, then left without looking back. From that moment on, Emma had completely lost him. After a long journey, Ethan finally arrived in Country B, where he was about to start his new life. There was no love here, only work. He would become the person he wanted to be and live for himself from now on. This time, he was here as a core member of the technical team, preparing for a 5-year research project. Meanwhile, back at home, Emma attended Max's birthday party. She took out a beautifully wrapped small gift box and presented him with a talisman for peace. I know you lack nothing, so I prayed to the gods for your well-being and a smooth future. She even knelt 3 times to ask for it. This favor was heavier than anything else. As soon as she finished speaking, Max pulled her tightly into his arms, almost as if he wanted to merge her into his body. The atmosphere was at its peak when he lowered his head to kiss her lips, but this time, she didn't feel the usual thrill. Instead, she felt distracted, a dull pain in her heart. As if something was about to happen, she hastily pushed him away and ran to the bathroom. Looking at herself in the mirror, she felt a bit dazed. As long as I hide it well enough, Ethan wouldn't find out. Besides, when she went to the temple for the talisman, she had also prayed for Ethan. Her love for him was no less than her love for Max. She comforted herself with this thought. But deep down, she began to feel increasingly uncertain. "What's wrong with you today? You're not in a good mood?" Max asked from behind, wrapping his arms around her tightly. He rested his head in her neck, greedily inhaling her scent, his hands wandering across her body. Only when her dress loosened did she snap back to reality and push him away. "Stop. I need to get home early tonight. I promised Ethan." Max's eyes reddened. "But today is my birthday. Can you stay with me just this last time? I promise I won't see you again unless you allow it." A single tear that slipped down her skin, soft and tingling, unsettled her more than his passionate kiss. She was lost again an hour later after fixing her makeup that had been messed up by Max's kisses and taking a hot shower to rid herself of his scent. She drove home and opened the door to an eerily quiet house. "Ethan?" she called loudly, but the only response was the chilling silence. At that moment, she panicked for the first time. She turned on all the lights in the house and saw the unopened chicken wrap in the trash bin. Her legs wobbled slightly. She broke down and shouted, "Ethan, stop playing games. Come out. I know it's my fault. I promised I would come back early today, and I broke my promise again. I swear it won't happen again. Please come out." But all that greeted her was silence. No, Ethan wouldn't leave her. He must have just wanted to punish her a little. That's why he was hiding. Emma repeated this reassurance to herself until her gaze fell on the gift box on the table. Forgetting what Ethan had said about waiting 2 days to open it, she tore open the wrapping paper in a frenzy. Inside, she found 2 divorce papers, already signed by him. He hadn't asked for anything, just his freedom, leaving with nothing. She gripped the thin sheets of paper tightly, her knuckles turning white, and her body trembled uncontrollably, almost losing her balance. How could this be? Ethan loved me so much. How could he suddenly want a divorce? Emma couldn't understand. She had hidden everything so well. He couldn't have found out. She was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof, pacing back and forth in the room. Summoning all her courage, she took out her phone, intending to call Ethan to explain. But as soon as she turned off airplane mode, a flood of messages from Ethan appeared. She could no longer bear it and collapsed to the ground. He had learned Italian a long time ago. That meant he had heard everything she had said to Max, all the ambiguous words spoken right in front of him. The thought tore Emma apart. What must Ethan have felt, staying by my side and hearing his wife talk intimately with another man? How painful must that have been? She couldn't continue thinking about it. It felt as though a pair of strong hands were tightening around her neck, making it impossible to breathe. Frantically, she searched for traces Ethan might have left behind. Opening a drawer, she found a thick photo album. Maybe if I rely on memories, I could move him and then have a chance to win him back. But the scene in front of her pushed her deeper into despair. The album, filled with over 1,000 photos and all the memories with Ethan, was gone. Disappeared. Now she finally understood. Ethan was really gone. He didn't want her anymore. Emma dug her nails into the palm of her hand, the sharp pain briefly restoring her rationality. She used every connection she had, checking the airline's exit records, and even swallowed her pride to beg the leaders at Ethan's company for his whereabouts, but came up empty-handed. She forced herself to stay calm, scouring every place he could have gone, but there was still no news. Ethan's parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago. He had no family left but himself. Where could he possibly go? An hour later, she received news from the airport. There was no exit record for Ethan today. She was engulfed in overwhelming sadness. This time, she had to accept it. She would never find him again. She couldn't even say the words, "I'm sorry," in time. Holding the thin divorce papers in her hands, she traced Ethan's signature with her fingers, the pain almost unbearable. Her tears blurred her vision until the wetness soaked the paper, revealing another line of writing. Under the shimmering moonlight, the water ripples, just like my longing, boundless, invisible, an eternal promise, turned into a bubble in an instant. Emma understood then. She had completely hurt Ethan, and he would never come back. The room seemed to spin around her, and she fainted, not knowing how long it had been before she groggily came to. She forced herself not to think about the painful things that had caused him so much heartache. But the image of Ethan, heartbroken and leaving her, kept replaying in her mind. He must have known everything I did. How had he been able to stay by her side all this time? Ethan, who had always lacked a sense of security, had such high expectations of love. On the day they confirmed their relationship, he had said, "I will always be loyal to love. If you ever betray me, I will leave without hesitation and never look back." At that time, Emma had thought the same. I would love only Ethan and never do anything to hurt him. But when had everything started to unravel? It probably began the year she went abroad. Alone in a foreign country, she felt lonely and helpless. It was during this time that she met her university classmate, Max. They spent a lot of time together and eventually developed feelings for each other, crossing a line they shouldn't have. She had gradually forgotten her original intentions and had gone further down the wrong path. She'd convinced herself that as long as she handled everything well, Ethan wouldn't find out. As long as she treated him with sincerity when she returned, everything would stay buried abroad. But she never expected that Max would follow her back to the country. Caught between her love for Ethan and her attachment to Max, she kept jumping back and forth between the two. Eventually, the truth could no longer be hidden. How could Ethan, so perceptive, not have noticed the signs? Just as she was thinking about this, her phone buzzed with a few delayed messages, all from Ethan's number. Excited, she opened the messages, expecting to see something soft, a sign that he might want to make amends. But instead, the content left her unable to accept it. Her hands trembled so much she could barely hold the phone. She swiped through the screen, seeing post after post from Max's WeChat moments. Every single thing they had done together, Ethan had already seen. The photos, the provocative words. Emma couldn't breathe. The photos, the provocative words. Emma couldn't breathe. Furious, she called Max. "Why did you tell Ethan everything? Don't you know how important he is to me?" There was a pause on the other end before Max's hoarse voice responded, "I know he's important to you, but you're just as important to me. I only love you so much. Is it wrong to want you to stay with me forever?" Emma froze. For the first time, she felt Max's love was like a heavy chain, suffocating her. "Max," she said coldly, "I warned you. I won't allow you near Ethan. Who do you think you are? You made me lose him, and now you'll never have peace either." The more Emma thought about it, the angrier she became. She drove straight to Max's place, furiously banging on the door. Max was unsurprised to see her and smiled as he let her in. But before he could react, she slapped him hard across the face before he could even process what had happened. Emma said through gritted teeth, "Max, I never imagined you were such a shameless man. You pretend to love me, but you've done nothing but hurt me. You're disgusting." As soon as she finished speaking, Emma raised her hand again, intending to slap him once more, but he caught her wrist, pulling her into his arms. "I'm sorry, Emma. I love you so much. I can't stand the thought of sharing you with anyone. Please, believe me, I did it because I love you. I don't think I did anything wrong." Emma sneered. I thought I loved you, but after Ethan left me, I realized I've always only loved him. You were just a passing rainstorm. When the rain stops, so does everything between us. Max's eyes turned red as he gripped Emma's shoulders, looking at her in disbelief. So you never loved me at all? Without hesitation, just as she had before, Emma blurted out, "To me, you were just a fleeting novelty." Max gave a bitter laugh. "I gave up my job abroad to come back here and be with you, and now you're telling me you never loved me." Emma looked at the man who had caused her to lose the one she truly loved and felt disgusted. "Yes, not only do I not love you, but I also want you to pay for your actions. I know how important your job is to you, but don't forget, if it weren't for me recommending you, you would never have had the opportunity to work at Panda Group." Max's eyes widened, and a hint of fear flashed across his face. "What are you going to do? I can give you this job, and I can just as easily make you lose everything." "This is your just punishment." Seeing that Emma was determined, Max gave up pretending. "Emma, you really disgust me. Back then, it was you who shamelessly slept with me, and now you're putting on an act of deep emotion. Who are you trying to fool?" "What?" Emma was stunned, unable to believe these words were coming from Max. Max ignored her shock and continued. "You couldn't keep your boundaries and cheated on me. You should have known this day would come. I was just helping you out behind the scenes. The real culprit is you. And you have no one to blame but yourself." Each word Max spoke made Emma's face grow paler. "And there's something you probably don't know. After I returned to the country and we met for the first time, Ethan came to see me. He begged me to leave you. I bet him that you wouldn't leave me. And of course, he lost." Emma's head spun, as though struck by lightning. She fled from Max's house in a daze. The series of blows to her heart were too much for her to bear. Once outside, her body instinctively reacted with nausea. She collapsed by the roadside, sobbing uncontrollably, her appearance completely disregarded. The following months, Emma did everything she could to search for any trace of Ethan, but it was as though he had completely disappeared from the world. The long period of stress, combined with her depression, eventually caused her to fall ill. Meanwhile, after losing his job, Max left South City. Word was that things weren't going well for him. 5 years later, in Country B, Ethan and his team had finally completed their monumental research project, and it was time to apply for their return to the homeland. His mentor asked, "Are you still planning to go back? If not, I can help you apply to stay here." He shook his head. "It's been 5 years. It's time to go home." Upon returning to China, their organization awarded them the highest honor. Major media outlets reported on them, and in no time, they became celebrities both at home and abroad. Amid the crowd, Ethan spotted Emma at first glance. In his memory, her eyes were always bright, filled with the pride of youth. But now, she was dressed in a plain dark green puffer jacket, dark circles under her eyes, her expression weary. There was no light in her gaze anymore, as if her once vibrant energy was on the verge of disappearing. Tears welled in her eyes as she stood at a distance, silently mouthing, "I'm sorry." After the interview, she made her way through the crowd and unsteadily approached him, her sobs preceding her words. Tears fell from her eyes in heavy drops. The fragile, petite woman seemed as if she might shatter at any moment. He looked at her indifferently. Not a single ripple of emotion stirred within him. Time, indeed, was the best remedy. Fearing her sobs would attract attention, he silently allowed her to get into his car. She took the tissue he handed her, her crying subsiding, trembling. She said, "I thought I would never see you again. I'm so glad I can still see you." She reached out to touch his face, but he turned his head away, avoiding her touch. He pushed up the gold-rimmed glasses resting on the bridge of his nose, his expression serious and distant, exuding a faint sense of detachment. She seemed to sense something was wrong and quickly withdrew her hand. "Did you come to see me just to have a look?" He broke the silence, his tone neutral, revealing no emotions. She sniffled, her small frame seeming to carry a world of grievances. She looked like she wanted to tell him all the suffering she had endured over the years, but he had no patience to hear it. He glanced at the watch on his wrist, and his voice was as cold as ice. "You have 10 minutes. I have things to do, and I don't have time to sit here reminiscing with you." Hearing this, she finally stopped crying. "I want to explain the things that happened back then. I know I was wrong. I've completely ended things with Max. These years, I've suffered from severe depression while searching for you. I couldn't sleep at night. I really got my comeuppance. Can you forgive me? I really do love you. Without you, I can't live." Looking at the woman before him, filled with longing, he only found it laughable. "You don't really love me or can't bear to lose me. You just can't accept that someone who loved you for 20 years no longer does. It's like losing a dog you've raised for years. It's not easy to get used to, let alone someone who has been by your side for so long. So don't tell me you love me. The person who truly loves me would never do the things that hurt me. Only after losing something do you begin to cherish it. But that's just because of your unwillingness to let go." She froze, as if finally having her lies exposed. Her head lowered, and she spoke sincerely. "I know no matter what I say, you won't believe me anymore. I made mistakes, and I should bear the consequences. I'm not here to seek your forgiveness. I just wanted to see you one last time. I know there's a gap between us. You're like the shining star in the sky, while I've already rotted in the mud. I don't dare to wish for anything. I just hope you'll be happy. This time, it's really goodbye, Ethan." With those words, she opened the car door and stepped out. As she walked farther away, he gave a faint smile and drove off. And they never met again.